You store data in a database, and you can use Python to get data from that database. Would you like to know how? Database connection on the menu with SQLite. So we have a lot of choice on the internet, and what we can choose, that data that's stored somewhere, and it must be made available when we need to access it. So we have items and names of items, maybe prices and some details, and we might have quite a lot of choice. So these are stored in a database. So they're stored and they're retrieved. So what is a database? Well, you know what a library is, and that's an organized collection of data items that are easily retrieved. So we have that with files that are in folders that can be in filing cabinets. So now we can do this in the digital world. Database has a lot of things inside it. Do we need a whole new room? Well, no, not anymore. We can use databases for small businesses or even our own hobby, and then they don't need to be the size of a room anymore. So what do we need? We need a database, we need our data, and a connection. So on a website we've got data, we've got a database, so what connects the website to the database? Well, some type of app, some type of application, and that can be in Python. So let's look at how we can set that up. Okay, we need to set this up. So what do we need? We need a database, SQLite, we need Python, and we need something to connect the Python to the database. That's called a bridge. With Python we use something called ODBC, and that stands for Open Database Connectivity. So that's the bridge. So to set up we need to get the database, get the bridge, get some database code, get some Python code. We're going to use a menu system, and then we're going to put that code together. So we split this up. You may already have your computer set up. If you haven't, then we'll show you how to do that in the second part at the end of all of this video. But first we're going to show you what to do once you have set it up, which involves the Python and the database code. So if it's set up, you just need to watch the code, but if you do need to set up first, if you haven't set up already, then the details are in part 2. So part 1, the Python. So first we're going to look at the Python code for the menu system, which we did before in the menu challenge. Then we're going to look at the database code that we're going to be putting inside that Python code, and then we're going to put the two codes together. So here is the code for the menu challenge. Not all of the code, just the if statement. And here we've got 4 options, and you select one of those options and it prints the message. Now the database code, we're looking at 4 parts: connecting to the database, creating a cursor, the database code, which is called SQL, that's going to be inside the Python code, and then how do we get and print the results. So this is what code you would see inside Python that connects to the database. So we start off, we can get SQLite, and then we can create the connection. So we have this connection, we use .connect and the database name, in this example test.db. Cursor is quite straightforward. We just use .cursor, and that makes, in this example, C is the cursor now. So we execute the code. So we have the execute, so C.execute, C is our cursor, and brackets with the inverted or quotation marks that we put our code inside. So it's like a string. And in this example we've got select all from customer, so that's SQL code that we're putting inside our Python code. To get the results, we can put that in a for loop, for example. So here we're just going to print each row, we called it R, and we use that a for loop to get each row. So that's how to get our results. So we want to connect before our menu system. So here we've reduced our options to 3, but we have 3 print statements in 3 options, but we connect to our database first. Then we create our cursor. We do that before the menu system as well. Now we've added some more code here. It's the same code, but in each option 1, 2 and 3 we've put the for loop that we saw before. So it's the same code, we've just mixed the two together. So that's pretty much it. Now there is some more other code that you would want to add in a menu system. So for example, if you want a user to put in the values, you can use input. If you want more than one option, you'd use a loop. And there are other things you may want to look at, so you can go back to the menu challenge video for them. Also, we just use the simple select all SQL statement, and you might want to change that. There are other different select statements. You can insert data, update it and delete it. So if you want to know all about SQL, you can see that in the database in Simple English playlist. There's a few videos on about There are a few videos that explain how to use a database. So that involves the SQL code. So see SQL in Simple English. Now let's look at this in action. We have the database code here. We start with the import SQLite 3. We're going to create the connection with the database name, then the cursor, and then we're going to select a row using the SQL, the database code, inside a for loop, and then print that row. So we can copy that code, and we're going to use the spider editor. So we just copy and paste that code into the editor, and now what we need to do is we need to change the database name, which in our case is test, and the select statement, we might have to make sure we've got the correct table name. So in the example that we used to set up, we used a table called persons. So we're going to save that Python file in the same, we're going to save that in the same folder as our database. So we can connect to our database, and if it's correct, the table is correct, we will select everything from the persons table, and you can see the results there. That has retrieved the 2 rows that we set up. We're going to take the code that we used in the menu challenge. Here we've just got simple if, elif, else statement with 4 options, and they just print something when you choose that option. So we're going to put that in Spider, save the file as a Python file. I'm going to call this menu.py. So save that where our database is. And here, if you select option 1, it will print when a car. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move our database SQL code and mix it with our menu code. So we want to connect to our database and create a cursor first before we do any loops or anything, before we go in our menu. And with that cursor we can use that for the SQL code, and that's going to be like an option. So for example, option 1, we want to select a table. So for example, in option 1 we might want to select the whole table. So that is our for loop that we did before, with the for loop inside the SQL code inside the for loop, and that just prints the rows. So that will happen if we select option 1. We can run that and we can see it works. So we've got the menu system and our database SQL code working. Now what happens with the other options, you can copy and paste them, the SQL database code inside those options. So perhaps if you check that first, that makes sure the menu system's working. So you can give a different option 3 for example, and that works. You can try the option 2 and try the option 4. Now obviously you're not going to have the same option, the same SQL code, the same thing happening for all the 4 options. So you might want to just change the SQL code, the database code, in each of the options. So in this example we're looking at the persons table. We can see the columns in here, and we're going to add some more code just to see or just to show you how this works inside our menu system. So we have different things inside the menu system. So here we've got option 3. We're just going to select from persons, the table persons, where the personal ID, person ID equals 1. So we can see that that works. Perhaps if we copy and paste that into option 4 and then change the personal ID, person ID, and then that's a different option for option 4. So we can change that to 2. So you can run that. Didn't like something. So be careful, it's Python code. If there's an error, it will give an error message. So we can look at this. What's the problem? Well, we can see that this print is somehow wrong. So let's check that again. Indentation errors often happen when you copy and paste code from somewhere else or on the internet. So we can see there that we get rid of all the spaces, put in our new indentation, and that works. So we've got select everything from the table in options 1 and 2, person ID 1 in option 3, and personal ID 2 in option 4. So you can see how that works. Now we've got several options in our menu system, and they give us something that happens in our SQL code. If we have a look, we can see the other code that we used in the menu challenge, and if you want to add that to this code, then please do so. And that will mean the user can put some entry in, and then they can choose what will happen in the menu system. So here's the whole code from that menu challenge. Part 2, the setup. We're going to get our database, SQLite. Then we're going to create a table with some data inside it. To connect our Python menu to the database, we need the bridge, the ODBC. So here we're going to download it, install it, and set it up. Download, install SQLite DB browser. Now we're going to download our database, which we're going to use SQLite. So the SQLite DB browser is perhaps the easiest way that we can use a database. It is just like a window. You can use database tools and write SQL code into there, store data. So it's quite a simple database to use. So this web interface makes it quite straightforward to use, and it's free. So we can put in DB browser for SQLite, and we can put it in a search engine, and it will come up with a download page. And we can, this computer's got Windows 64-bit, so we can look for the download, and then we can download that, and then we have it. Quite straightforward, quite simple and fast. So after our download, we have the DB browser for SQLite on our computer in our downloads folder. So we can click on that, and we can see we have a zip file. We can extract that. So extract it in your program files, or where you would like to extract it. We extracting it here to our program files in the C drive. That's fine. Yep, we got permission as the administrator, so that's where we like our software to go. So we can look for it in our C program files, and here's the folder, DB browser for SQLite. And if we look in there, we can see the files. Now, if it doesn't have a shortcut on your menu system, it does sometimes, but if it doesn't, you can create your own shortcut. So here, we've right-clicked the mouse and we're going to create shortcut. It says it can't create it there. Do you want it on a desktop? So we put it on a desktop. So if you haven't got a shortcut in your start menu, you can create a shortcut on a desktop like that. Copy database code and create table and enter some data. So let's look how we might create some data in our database. We can start off with creating a table. So we can put this in a search engine and go to W3C schools, and here's an example of how you might create a table in SQL. So we're just going to copy that. We're going to open up a new database. We're going to put it on the we're going to make this database, we're going to call it test, and then we're going to put it on the desktop. So we're going to save a database called test on the desktop. So we want to create a table. You can do this inside this tool, but just for this example, we're just going to do it with the database SQL code. So I'll execute SQL tab, we just put the code in there, we run it, and underneath it will tell us that it's been successful, and that creates the table for us. So now the table's been created, we can put data in there. Just in case you can't see the text, I'm just going to make it bigger, so therefore you can make the text bigger there. That's in that options, preferences. And now we want to put some data in, so we're going to create a new record, and we're going to create a person and give them an ID 1, and then last name, first name, address and city. So that will be one record for John Smith, and John Smith's personal ID, person ID is number 1. Create another record, person ID 2, also someone called Smith but not John. What should we call them? Alan. Address, oh, the same place. Okay, so now we have 2 records. Just if you just want to check that, we're going to go to the execute SQL again. We're just going to get rid of this code from before, and we're going to just write a select all from persons table. So you can see here when we start writing the table, it will give us the table name, persons. So we run that, and you can see that we have the 2 rows. When we write our Python, this is what we want to see. We want to see these 2 rows. Download, install, set up a bridge, ODBC. To get our bridge, our ODBC, we're just going to put ODBC in our search engine. We're going to use it for SQLite, so we can see here we've got options, and we can go to a page where we can download the correct file. So again, 64-bit Windows, we can download that, and you'll see that it will download into our download file. So quite straightforward to get the ODBC file. So we can click on that to install it, and you'll see the instructions, quite straightforward. Next, I agree. Put the file in program files. Yep. Don't click this SQLite 2 drivers, don't need that. Next, and it's finished. So pretty straightforward. Okay, we're going to set up the ODBC. So we look for ODBC. If there's a shortcut, you'll see it give you an optional 64-bit or 32-bit. So let's try the 64-bit first. If it doesn't work, you might need to go back to the 32-bit. Just going to add. We've got our ODBC driver there, so we can finish that. The data source name, you can just make up any name you like. But the database name, we're going to browse, and we're going to go to our test database that is on our desktop. So we're going to go to that, open that, and we're going to OK that, and that will create the bridge from the ODBC to the test database, which you can use to import and export and also use with our Python code. So that's how to set up an ODBC bridge. Okay, thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Bye for now.